The moment Elena stepped into the Alpha King's darkened chambers, the scent hit her like a blade to the chest, pine, smoke, and something achingly familiar. No. It can't be him. But when the figure in the wheelchair turned, those cold silver eyes confirmed her worst nightmare. The maid who had shattered her heart 5 years ago was now her employer. And he had no idea who she was. Elena's fingers tightened on the cleaning supplies in her arms. 5 years of running. 5 years of building a new life from the ashes of her old one. And now fate had dragged her right back to the one person she'd sworn never to see again. Cale Blackwood. Former Alpha heir. Current Alpha King. And the man who destroyed her in front of 300 wolves without even remembering her face. You're the new maid. His voice was exactly as she remembered, deep, commanding, cold as river stone. Elena kept her eyes down. Submissive. Invisible. Just another servant. Yes, Your Majesty. Look at me when I speak to you. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The herbs she'd been taking for 5 years, the ones that masked her natural scent, that kept her wolf dormant, they would hold. They had to hold. She raised her head. Cale studied her with those piercing silver eyes, and Elena waited for the recognition. Waited for him to see the girl he'd broken on the cold stone floor of the mating hall. The girl who'd collapsed when he'd severed their bond with 6 words, "You are unworthy of standing beside me." But his gaze passed over her face like she was furniture. The last 3 maids quit within a week, he said. I don't tolerate incompetence, and I don't repeat instructions. If you can't handle the work, leave now and save us both the trouble. Elena swallowed the bitter laugh rising in her throat. He didn't remember her. She'd been so insignificant to him that he'd shattered her entire existence and hadn't bothered to file away her face. I can handle it, she said quietly. We'll see. He wheeled his chair toward the window, presenting her with his broad back. Start with the fireplace. The ashes haven't been cleared in 3 days. Elena moved toward the hearth on wooden legs. Her wolf, the one she'd spent years suppressing, stirred restlessly beneath her skin. Even drugged into near silence, the creature recognized its mate. Wanted to reach for him, despite everything. He rejected us, Elena reminded her wolf. He called us weak. Unworthy. He nearly killed us. The bond's severance had been the worst pain of her life. She'd felt herself dying from the inside out, her wolf howling in agony as Cale ripped away the connection like tearing roots from soil. The pack healers had given her a 50% chance of survival. She'd beaten those odds. Barely. Elena knelt before the fireplace and began shoveling ash into the bucket. Her hands were steady. Her face was blank. Inside, she was screaming. 2 years ago, she'd heard the news through whispered pack gossip. The Alpha King, attacked by rogues. Paralyzed from the waist down. His wolf damaged so badly he could barely shift. The most powerful alpha in 5 generations, reduced to a wheelchair and a darkened room. Part of her had felt vindicated. The rest of her had felt nothing at all. Now, cleaning his fireplace while he sat in his chair like a broken monument to his former glory, Elena realized the vindication was hollow. She didn't want him destroyed. She wanted to have never loved him in the first place. You're quiet. Cale's voice cut through her thoughts. The other maids chattered constantly. Trying to earn my favor, I assume. I'm here to work, not talk. A pause. Then, good. Elena finished with the fireplace and moved to dust the bookshelves. The room was massive, dark wood, heavy curtains, masculine and oppressive. The kind of space a man built when he wanted the world to know he wasn't accepting visitors. You're not from the capital, Cale said. It wasn't a question. Elena's hand stilled on a leather-bound volume. No. Your accent. Northern Territory? East. The lie came easily. She'd practiced it enough times. Long way to come for a maid's position. The pay is good. That, at least, was true. The Blackwood estate paid 3 times the standard rate, hazard compensation, she'd assumed, for dealing with a volatile, broken alpha. The money would cover Jamie's next surgery and 3 months of physical therapy. Her little brother was the only reason she was here. The only reason she'd taken the job without checking the address, without asking questions. She'd been so focused on the paycheck that she hadn't realized she was walking back into her own personal hell. The pay is good because this job is difficult, Cale said. I'm not pleasant company. I don't need pleasant. I need employment. Another pause. Longer this time. Elena could feel his eyes on her back, assessing, calculating. Her wolf stirred again, and she pressed it down viciously. What's your name? Elena. She'd kept her first name, a small rebellion, or maybe just stupidity. Elena Vance. Elena. The way he said it sent shivers down her spine. He'd never said her name before. Not during the rejection, not during the months of their engagement, not once. She'd been the Sinclair girl or my intended or, at the end, nothing at all. Get the windows next, he said. I want them clean enough to see the tree lean. Elena moved to obey. The windows were enormous, floor to ceiling, and covered in a layer of grime that suggested months of neglect. She worked in silence, her cloth squeaking against the glass, her mind churning. Why was she here? Beyond the money, beyond the desperation, why had fate pulled her back to him? She didn't believe in coincidences. Her grandmother had taught her better than that. Everything happens for a reason, the old woman used to say. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. Elena had stopped believing in the moon goddess the night Cale Blackwood rejected her. You're not afraid of me. She turned. Cale had wheeled closer, his silver eyes narrowed. In the dim light, he looked dangerous. All sharp edges and coiled power. The wheelchair didn't diminish him. If anything, it made him more intimidating, like a wolf pretending to be wounded before it struck. Should I be? Elena asked. Most people are. Most people probably have good reason. She turned back to the window. I'm just here to clean your house, Your Majesty. You're not going to bite me for missing a spot. A sound, almost a laugh, quickly suppressed. You might be surprised. Elena scrubbed harder at a stubborn smudge. Her heart was racing, but she kept her breathing even. Controlled. The herbs in her system helped with that, too, dulling her physical responses, keeping her chemically calm even when her mind was chaos. She finished the windows as the last light faded from the sky. When she turned to leave, Cale was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Same time tomorrow, he said. Don't be late. Yes, Your Majesty. She gathered her supplies and walked to the door. Calm. Measured. Just a maid finishing her shift. But as she stepped into the hallway, something made her glance back. A mirror hung beside the door, antique, gilded, positioned to catch the light from the windows she'd just cleaned. In its reflection, she saw Cale. Standing. He rose from the wheelchair in one fluid motion, his body powerful and unbroken, every line of him radiating the lethal grace of a born alpha. He stretched his arms above his head, rolled his shoulders, and walked, to the window she'd just cleaned. Elena froze. He stood there for a long moment, staring out at the tree lean, his reflection sharp and clear in the glass. Then, as if sensing her gaze, he turned. Elena jerked back from the doorway, her heart slamming against her ribs. She pressed herself against the wall, fighting to control her breathing, to stay silent, to become invisible. The Alpha King wasn't crippled at all. He was pretending. But why? Elena forced her legs to move. Down the hallway. Down the stairs. Out into the cold night air where she could finally breathe. The questions circled in her mind like hungry wolves. Why would the most powerful alpha in 5 generations fake a disability? What was he hiding? What was he planning? And the most dangerous question of all, the one she couldn't afford to ask but couldn't stop thinking. Did his deception have anything to do with her? Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay in her narrow bed in the servants' quarters, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows crawl across the plaster as the moon tracked its path across the sky. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him. Standing. Whole. Powerful. The Alpha King isn't crippled at all. The words circled in her mind like wolves prowling a wounded deer. She should leave. Pack her single bag, slip out before dawn, and disappear into another new life. She'd done it before. She could do it again. But Jamie's face floated up from the darkness, her little brother, pale and thin in his hospital bed, his body slowly failing from an illness no doctor could name. The next surgery was scheduled for 6 weeks from now. Without it, he had maybe 3 months. Elena pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes until she saw stars. She couldn't leave. Not yet. Not until she had enough money to save him. And now she was holding a secret that could destroy the most powerful man in the kingdom. That had to be worth something. The next morning, Elena reported to the kitchens at 6 sharp. The head housekeeper, a stern-faced beta named Mrs. Thornton, assigned her to the East Wing, guest quarters, currently occupied by visiting nobility who'd come to pay their respects to the ailing king. Keep your head down and your mouth shut, Mrs. Thornton instructed. The guests are not to be disturbed, questioned, or engaged in conversation. Your furniture. Understand? Yes, ma'am. Elena collected her supplies and climbed the stairs to the East Wing. The hallway was silent, the thick carpet swallowing her footsteps. She knocked on the first door, waited, then let herself in when no answer came. The room was empty but recently occupied. The bed was unmade, clothes scattered across chairs, papers spread across the writing desk. Elena moved methodically through her tasks, making the bed, collecting towels, emptying the wash basin, while her eyes catalogued everything. Letters bearing official seals. A map of the estate with certain rooms circled in red ink. A list of names, some crossed out, others marked with small symbols she didn't recognize. She didn't touch any of it. But she remembered. The second room belonged to someone Messier. Wine stains on the carpet, a woman's earring caught between the cushions of a chair, and a half-burned letter in the fireplace. Elena pieced together what fragments remained. The king suspects nothing. When the time comes, make sure the Omega. The rest was ash. Her stomach tightened. Omega. How many Omegas were involved in whatever plot was brewing in this house? Or was it coincidence, a reference to someone else entirely? She finished her rounds and returned to the servants' quarters to find chaos. 2 maids were arguing in harsh whispers, a footman was nursing a bruised jaw, and Mrs. Thornton was standing in the center of it all with a face like a thundercloud. What happened? Elena asked a young maid named Sophie, who was hovering at the edges of the commotion. Lord Dominic's man caught Peter eavesdropping outside the study, Sophie whispered. Gave him a beating and threatened to have him dismissed. Lord Dominic? The king's uncle. He arrived last month with half a dozen advisors and hasn't left since. Sophie's voice dropped even lower. Some say he's waiting for the king to die so he can take the throne. Others say he's not planning to wait at all. Elena filed the information away. And the servants? Which side are they on? Sophie gave her a sharp look, sharper than Elena expected from someone who seemed so timid. The smart ones aren't on any side. They keep their heads down and their mouths shut. And the others? The others end up like Peter. Sophie nodded toward the footman, who was being helped to his feet. Or worse. That afternoon, Elena was summoned to the Alpha King's chambers. She climbed the stairs with her heart in her throat, clutching her cleaning supplies like a shield. When she entered, Cale was in his wheelchair by the window, exactly as she'd left him yesterday. As if he'd never moved. As if she'd imagined the whole thing. "Close the door," he said without turning. Elena obeyed. The click of the latch sounded unnaturally loud in the silent room. "You were in the East Wing this morning." It wasn't a question. Elena's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice steady. "Yes. Mrs. Thornton assigned me to the guest quarters." "And what did you see there?" She could lie. Claim she'd seen nothing, noticed nothing, was nothing but a mindless servant going through the motions. But something in his tone told her he already knew the answer. He was testing her. "Papers," she said carefully. "Maps. A list of names. And a half-burned letter that mentioned an Omega." Cale turned his wheelchair to face her. In the daylight, she could see the toll the years had taken on him, fine lines around his eyes, a hardness in his jaw that hadn't been there before. But he was still devastatingly handsome. Still the man who'd haunted her dreams for 5 long years. "You read through my guests' private correspondence." "I read what was lying in plain sight while I cleaned their rooms." "And you're telling me about it?" "Why?" Elena met his silver gaze without flinching. "Because something is wrong in this house. I can smell it." A flicker of something, surprise? Interest, crossed his face. "Can you now?" "Servants talk. They think I'm too new to notice, but I hear things. Lord Dominic's men have been questioning the staff about your routines, your medications, your vulnerabilities. The kitchen girl who makes your meals was offered a month's wages to report what you eat and when." She paused. She refused, but someone else might not. Cale was silent for a long moment. His eyes never left her face, and Elena had the uncomfortable sensation of being dissected, analyzed, measured against some internal standard she couldn't see. "Why are you telling me this?" he finally asked. "You don't know me. You have no loyalty to me. I know you better than you think. And loyalty has nothing to do with it. I took this job because I need the money," Elena said. "I can't get paid if you're dead." A sound escaped him, not quite a laugh, but close. "Practical. I try." He studied her for another long moment, then wheeled himself closer. Elena held her ground, even when he stopped mere inches away, close enough that she could smell him. Pine and smoke and that achingly familiar undertone that made her wolf whimper in the cage she'd built for it. "You're not afraid of me," he said. "You look me in the eye. You speak to me like I'm a person, not a king or a cripple or a monster." His voice dropped. "Why?" "Because I've already survived the worst thing you could do to me." "Fear is a waste of energy," Elena said. "You're either going to hurt me or you're not. Being afraid won't change which one it is." Something shifted in his expression. Something almost like hunger. "Who are you, Elena Vance?" "Nobody important." "I don't believe that." "Believe what you want." She hefted her cleaning supplies. "Now, do you want me to do my job, or are we going to keep having this conversation?" For a moment, she thought he might press further. But then he wheeled back toward the window, giving her space to move. "The fireplace," he said. "And this time, I want the mantel dusted properly." The last maid missed the corners. Elena moved to obey, her hands steady even as her mind raced. She'd just made herself valuable to the Alpha King. Inserted herself into whatever game he was playing. It was dangerous, reckless, even, but it was also leverage. Protection. A reason for him to keep her close and keep her alive. And if she was being honest with herself, there was a darker reason too. A reason she didn't want to examine too closely. She wanted to know why he was pretending to be broken. She wanted to understand the man who'd destroyed her. The days fell into a pattern. Elena cleaned the guest quarters in the mornings, noting every scrap of information, every whispered conversation, every suspicious visitor. In the afternoons, she reported to Cale's chambers, where she cleaned and he interrogated her about what she'd seen. Their exchanges were brief at first, clinical, transactional. But as the days passed, something shifted. Cale started asking her questions that had nothing to do with his enemies. Where had she grown up? Did she have family? What had brought her to service work? Elena deflected with half-truths and careful omissions. East Territory. A younger brother. The need for money. Nothing that could identify her as Elena Sinclair, the Omega he'd rejected 5 years ago. But Cale was relentless. "You're educated," he observed one afternoon, watching her dust his bookshelves. "Your speech patterns, your vocabulary, you didn't grow up in the servant class. My mother believed in education. And your father? Dead." That much was true. "When I was 12. "I'm sorry." The word startled her. She turned to find him watching her with an expression she couldn't read, something almost soft, almost human. "Why?" she asked. "You didn't kill him." "No. But I know what it's like to lose a father young. It shapes you." Elena thought of the old Alpha King. Cale's father, who had died 3 years ago in a hunting accident that everyone suspected was actually assassination. She'd heard the rumors, even in exile. The grief had nearly broken Cale. Had changed him from a cold, ambitious heir into something harder. Something darker. "I survived," she said quietly. "That's all that matters." Cale's eyes lingered on her face. "Yes," he murmured. "I imagine you did." 2 weeks into her employment, Elena made a discovery that changed everything. She'd been cleaning the library, a massive room filled with floor-to-ceiling shelves and the musty smell of old paper, when she'd found a book that didn't belong. It was tucked behind a row of histories, its spine unmarked, its pages filled with handwritten notes. Medical notes. Elena's hands trembled as she read. The book documented cases of a rare condition, a slow-acting poison that mimicked genetic illness, attacking the nervous system over years rather than days. The symptoms were listed in clinical detail: progressive weakness, organ deterioration, eventual paralysis. Jamie's symptoms. Exactly. She turned the pages faster, her heart pounding. The poison was derived from a plant called moonshade, rare, expensive, nearly impossible to detect once it had bonded with the victim's blood. The only cure was equally rare, an antidote made from the moonshade flower itself, bloomed under a full moon and processed with specific alchemical techniques. The final pages of the book contained a timeline. Case studies. Victims. And at the bottom, a name she recognized. James Sinclair. Dosed 5 years ago. Prognosis, terminal without intervention. Elena's vision blurred. 5 years ago. The same time as her rejection. The same pack, the same territory, the same enemies who had wanted her destroyed. Her brother's illness wasn't natural. Someone had poisoned him deliberately, systematically, knowing it would take years to kill him. Knowing Elena would do anything, to save him. She'd thought fate had brought her back to Cale Blackwood. Now she understood the truth. She'd been manipulated here. Baited with a job, a salary, an opportunity. Someone wanted her at the Blackwood estate, and they'd used her dying brother to ensure she'd come. The question was, who? And why? Elena found Cale in his chambers that evening, staring out the window at the darkening forest. She didn't announce herself. Just walked in and closed the door behind her. "We need to talk," she said. He turned his wheelchair smoothly. "You didn't knock. This couldn't wait." She crossed the room and laid the medical book on his lap. "I found this in the library. Hidden behind the histories. Someone poisoned my brother 5 years ago with moonshade, and the timeline coincides with..." She stopped. "With my rejection. With you destroying my life." Cale's eyes sharpened. "Coincides with what?" "With events I'd rather not discuss." Elena forced her voice to stay steady. The point is that someone engineered my brother's illness. Someone who wanted leverage over me. And I think it's connected to whatever is happening in this house. Cale was silent, his fingers tracing the spine of the book. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. Dangerous. You have a brother. Yes. You never mentioned him. You never asked. I asked if you had family. You said. I said I had a younger brother. I didn't say he was dying. Elena's voice cracked despite her best efforts. He's 19 years old. He's been sick for 5 years, and I've spent every penny I have trying to keep him alive. That's why I'm here. That's why I took this job. That's why I'm standing in this room right now, telling you things that could get me killed. Cale set the book aside and wheeled closer. In the dim light, his eyes looked almost black. Moonshade poisoning, he said slowly. That's not a commoner's weapon. It requires resources, knowledge, access. Whoever did this is powerful. I know. And you think they're connected to my enemies? I don't know. But I intend to find out. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Elena could feel her wolf stirring, could feel the pull of the bond she'd spent 5 years trying to sever. It was still there, she realized with horror. Damaged, dormant, but not destroyed. Like a root system buried deep underground, waiting for the right conditions to grow. I'll help you, Cale said finally. Find out who did this. Find the cure. Elena blinked. Why? Because you've helped me. Because you've proven yourself useful. He paused, and something flickered in his expression, something almost vulnerable. And because no one deserves to watch their family die slowly while they're powerless to stop it. She should have argued. Should have refused his help, kept her distance, protected herself from getting any more entangled with him than she already was. Instead, she nodded. All right. The next evening, Elena was carrying fresh linens to the guest wing when a hand shot out of an alcove and yanked her into the shadows. She didn't scream. Didn't struggle. Just went limp and let her attacker think he'd caught her off guard while she assessed her surroundings. Dark alcove. Stone walls. One exit, blocked by a man's body. Male scent, alpha, older, with an undertone of expensive cologne and barely concealed rot. Easy, little wolf, a smooth voice purred. I just want to talk. The hand released her, and Elena stepped back, her shoulders hitting cold stone. The man before her was tall, silver-haired, with features that might have been handsome if they weren't twisted by cruelty. He wore a nobleman's clothes and a politician's smile. Lord Dominic. The king's uncle. You've been busy, Dominic said, studying her with predatory interest. Cleaning rooms. Gathering information. Running straight to my nephew with everything you find. He tooted. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Elena said nothing. Her mind was racing, calculating exits, weapons, odds of survival. But the interesting thing is... Dominic leaned closer, inhaling deeply. You smell wrong. Like herbs and suppression and something hidden underneath. His smile widened. It took me a while to place it. To remember where I'd seen your face before. Elena's blood turned to ice. You're that Omega, Dominic breathed. The one Cale threw away at the mating ceremony. Elena Sinclair, wasn't it? The whole pack watched you collapse when he severed the bond. Most of us assumed you died. He laughed softly. But here you are. Alive, angry, and working in my nephew's house under a false name. How delicious. What do you want? Elena's voice came out steadier than she expected. Want? Dominic circled her slowly, a wolf assessing wounded prey. I want what everyone wants, power, security, the elimination of my enemies. And as it happens, you're perfectly positioned to help me achieve all three. I'm not going to betray the king. Betray? Dominic laughed again. My dear girl, What loyalty do you owe to the man who destroyed you? Who called you unworthy in front of hundreds of witnesses? Who ripped out your bond and left you bleeding on the floor like garbage? The memories surged up, Cale's cold voice, the gasps of the crowd, the agony of the severance tearing through her like claws. Elena shoved them down. That was 5 years ago. And yet here you are, hiding in his house, suppressing your scent so he won't recognize you. Dominic's eyes glittered. Tell me, does he know? That the maid he's grown so fond of is the maid he threw away like refuse? He doesn't remember my face. No, he wouldn't. You were nothing to him then. But you could be something now. Dominic reached into his coat and withdrew a small vial of golden liquid. Do you know what this is? Elena's heart stopped. Moonshade antidote. Very good. Your brother is dying, don't look so surprised. I make it my business to know these things. He was poisoned 5 years ago by someone who wanted to ensure your cooperation when the time came. Dominic held the vial up to catch the light. This is the cure. The only dose I'm aware of that currently exists. Help me take down my nephew, and I'll give it to you. Your brother lives. Simple as that. Why? Elena demanded. Why do you need me? You have resources, allies, power. Why involve a maid? Because maids are invisible. Because you have access to his private chambers, his confidence, his secrets. Dominic smiled. And because revenge is a powerful motivator. After all. He tucked the vial back into his coat, and his smile turned cruel. Don't you want revenge on the man who destroyed you? Chapter 3. Elena didn't give Dominic an answer that night. She'd learned long ago that desperation made people stupid, and she refused to be stupid, not when Jamie's life hung in the balance, not when she was trapped between two powerful alphas playing a game she didn't fully understand. I need time, she'd told Dominic, keeping her voice steady even as her heart raced. This isn't a small thing you're asking. He'd smiled that oily smile and released her with a warning. Don't take too long, little wolf. Your brother's clock is ticking. Now, 3 days later, Elena was playing the most dangerous game of her life. She reported to Dominic's man every evening, a brutish beta named Marcus who met her in the servants' stairwell and collected whatever scraps of information she chose to share. The king's eating schedule. His medication times. Which guards patrolled his corridor and when. All of it was true. All of it was useless. The real information. The assassination plans she'd pieced together from overheard conversations and stolen glances at documents, went straight to Cale. They're planning something for the winter solstice, Elena told him, standing in his chambers while afternoon light slanted through the windows she'd cleaned to crystal clarity. 3 weeks from now. Dominic has been meeting with the captain of the Northern Guard, and I saw payment ledgers hidden in his room. He's buying loyalty. Cale sat in his wheelchair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. He hadn't moved from that position in 10 minutes, his silver eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. You're playing both sides, he said quietly. Feeding Dominic just enough to keep him satisfied while bringing me the real intelligence. Elena didn't deny it. Yes. Why? What's your game, Elena Vance? Survival. Revenge. Saving my brother's life. Does it matter? The information is good. It matters to me. She met his gaze without flinching. Then consider it a mystery you'll have to live with. Something flickered in his expression, frustration, curiosity, something darker she couldn't name. His jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he might press harder, might demand answers she wasn't prepared to give. Instead, he looked away. The winter solstice. That's when the noble council convenes to assess my condition. If I'm deemed unfit to rule, they can vote to transfer power to my nearest male relative. Dominic. Yes. Cale's voice was bitter. My beloved uncle has been positioning himself for this moment since my father died. The rogue attack that paralyzed me wasn't random, it was orchestrated. I survived, but barely. And when I woke up, I realized the only way to root out every traitor in my court was to let them think they'd won. Elena processed this slowly. So you've been pretending to be broken for 2 years. Letting your enemies believe you're weak while you identify every single one of them. Yes. That's. She searched for the right word. Impressive. And insane. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. The two aren't mutually exclusive. Elena turned to the window, needing a moment to think. Outside, the forest stretched toward the mountains, dark pines dusted with early snow. She could see the guards patrolling the perimeter, could trace the paths she'd memorized in case she needed to run. She always needed to know how to run. Why are you telling me this? She asked without turning around. You barely know me. I could be working for Dominic. I could be lying about everything. You could be. His voice was closer than she expected. When she turned, she found he'd wheeled himself within arm's reach, his silver eyes searching her face. But you're not. How do you know? Because my wolf knows. Elena's breath caught. What? Cale's expression shifted, something raw and vulnerable bleeding through the cold mask he usually wore. My wolf has been restless since you arrived. Agitated in a way I haven't felt in years. He recognizes something in you, though I can't identify what. The herbs you use to suppress your scent, they're good, but they're not perfect. There's something underneath. Something that calls to him. Elena's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Her wolf, the one she'd spent 5 years drugging into silence, stirred in her chest, pressing against its cage. Mate, it whispered. Mate, mate, mate. You're imagining things, Elena said, but her voice came out too high, too strained. Am I? Cale leaned forward in his chair, and Elena caught a flash of the predator he was hiding beneath the invalid's disguise. Tell me your real name, Elena. Tell me why you look at me like you're waiting for a blow that never comes. Tell me why my wolf howls every time you leave this room. I can't. Can't or won't? Does it matter? He held her gaze for a long, charged moment. Then he sat back, and the predator retreated behind the mask of the broken king. No, he said quietly. I suppose it doesn't. The dream started that night. Elena had always dreamed of Cale. Nightmares, mostly, replaying the rejection over and over until she woke gasping and drenched in sweat. But these dreams were different. In these dreams, he touched her. Not cruelly, not coldly, but with a tenderness that made her ache. His hands in her hair, his lips on her throat, his voice murmuring words she couldn't quite hear. She woke from these dreams trembling, her body burning with a need she hadn't felt in 5 years. The herbs were failing. She'd known they would eventually. No suppressant worked forever, especially not against a mate bond, even a severed one. The connection between her and Cale had been damaged, not destroyed. And now, forced into his proximity day after day, it was trying to heal itself. Elena doubled her dosage. It helped with the scent, but it couldn't stop her wolf from clawing at the walls of its prison. Couldn't stop her body from responding every time Cale looked at her with those knowing silver eyes. She was running out of time. A week before the winter solstice, everything fell apart. It started with an argument. Elena had discovered evidence that Dominic's men were planning to poison the wine at the Noble Council meeting, a slow-acting toxin that would kill everyone who drank it within 48 hours. She'd brought the information to Cale immediately, expecting him to act. Instead, he dismissed her. I'm aware of the poison plot, he said, not looking up from the documents on his desk. I've already taken steps to address it. What steps? The council meeting is in 7 days. If Dominic. I said I've handled it. His voice was sharp, cutting. Your job is to gather information, not to question my decisions. Elena felt her temper flare, a dangerous heat that had nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with 5 years of suppressed rage. My job, she said tightly, is to keep you alive. Which is difficult when you won't tell me what you're planning. You're a maid. You don't need to know my plans. I'm not just a maid and we both know it. Kale looked up then, his silver eyes flashing. Then what are you? Because you won't tell me your real name, won't explain why you're helping me, won't give me any reason to trust you beyond blind faith. I've shared more with you in 3 weeks than I've shared with anyone in 3 years, and you give me nothing in return. I've given you intelligence that's kept you alive. Intelligence you're also feeding to Dominic. Scraps. Useless information designed to keep him satisfied while I figure out how to. Elena stopped, her chest heaving, her wolf snarling against its chains. Kale rose from his wheelchair. The movement was so sudden, so unexpected, that Elena stumbled backward. One moment he was the broken king, the pitiful invalid, the next he was towering over her, 6 feet of alpha power and barely restrained fury. How to what? He demanded, stalking toward her. How to play both sides until you get what you want. How to manipulate everyone around you while keeping your precious secrets. You don't understand. Then make me understand. He grabbed her shoulders, his grip just short of bruising. I have told you things that could destroy me. I have trusted you when every instinct screamed it was a mistake. And you. He stopped. His nostrils flared. Elena felt it at the same moment. A warmth spreading through her chest, a breaking sensation, like ice cracking on a spring river. The herbs in her system, already strained to their limit, finally failed. Her true scent flooded the room. Wildflowers and moonlight. The smell of the omega he'd rejected. The smell of his mate. Kale's hands went slack on her shoulders. His face drained of color, then flushed, then drained again. His wolf surged forward, turning his silver eyes to molten gold. No, he breathed. No, it can't. Elena tried to pull away, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. 5 years of suppression, of denial, of forcing her wolf into silence, it all came crashing down at once. The bond she'd thought was dead roared back to life, flooding her with sensations she'd forgotten existed. The pull toward him. The desperate, clawing need to touch, to claim, to belong. Elena, Kale whispered, and it wasn't her fake name anymore. It was a prayer, a curse, a recognition. Elena. Don't. Her voice came out broken. Don't say my name like that. It's you. All this time, it's been you. His hands came up to cup her face, his touch unbearably gentle. I thought you were dead. I searched for years, sent people to every territory, every pack. No one could find any trace of Elena Sinclair. Because Elena Sinclair doesn't exist anymore. She shoved at his chest, but he didn't budge. You killed her. You stood in front of 300 wolves and told everyone she was worthless, and then you ripped out her soul and left her bleeding on the floor. I had to. Don't. The word came out as a snarl, her wolf finally breaking free of its chains. Don't you dare tell me you had to. Don't you dare pretend there's some noble explanation for what you did. Kale's expression shattered. The mask of the cold king crumbled, and beneath it was something Elena had never seen before. Raw, desperate anguish. My father made me do it. Elena went still. He knew about us, Kale continued, his voice hoarse. Knew we were true mates, knew I intended to claim you at the ceremony. And he told me, he broke off, jaw clenching. He told me that if I didn't reject you publicly, if I didn't sever the bond completely, he would have your entire family killed. Your mother, your brother, your cousins, everyone who shared your blood. He had assassins in place. He showed me the kill orders. You're lying. I'm not. Kale's hands dropped from her face, and she saw them trembling. Do you think I wanted to do it? Do you think I didn't die inside when I said those words to you? I was cruel on purpose, Elena. I wanted you to hate me so completely that you'd run far away and never come back. I wanted you to survive. Elena's mind was spinning. She thought of Kale's father, the old Alpha King, cold and calculating and utterly ruthless. He'd been murdered 3 years ago, everyone said, though no one had ever proven who was responsible. She thought of her mother, who had died of a sudden illness 6 months after Elena's rejection. She thought of Jamie, poisoned at the exact same time, his body slowly failing from a toxin that no one could identify. "If you rejected me to save my family," she said slowly, "then why is my brother dying?" Kale's face went white. "What?" "Jamie. My little brother. He was poisoned with moonshade 5 years ago, the same time you rejected me. Someone wanted leverage over me. Someone wanted to make sure I'd be desperate enough to do anything they asked. That's impossible. I made my father swear, I gave up everything to protect." "Your father was a monster," Elena cut in harshly. "Did you really think he'd keep his word?" The silence that followed was devastating. Kale sank back against his desk, his powerful body suddenly looking fragile. Old. Broken in a way that had nothing to do with his fake paralysis. "I didn't know," he whispered. "Elena, I swear to you, I didn't know." "Would it have mattered if you did?" He looked at her then, and his eyes were wet. The Alpha King, the cold, ruthless ruler who'd sacrificed everything for power, was crying. "Yes," he said quietly. "It would have mattered. Because I would have killed him myself." Elena didn't know what to say. Didn't know what to feel. 5 years of hatred and grief and rage. She'd built her entire identity around being the woman Cale Blackwood had thrown away. And now he was telling her it had all been a lie. A sacrifice. A twisted act of love that had destroyed them both. "I don't believe you," she said, but her voice wavered. "I know. You called me worthless. Unworthy. You said I was too weak to stand beside you. I know. Do you have any idea what the bond's severance felt like?" Her voice cracked. "It was like dying, Cale. I felt my wolf being torn apart. I felt our connection, the most beautiful thing I'd ever experienced, ripped out of my chest like it was nothing. I screamed for 3 days. The healer said I had a 50% chance of surviving, and there were moments when I wished I hadn't." A tear tracked down Cale's cheek. "I felt it too." Elena stared at him. "The severance," he continued. "I was the one who initiated it, but it works both ways. I felt everything you felt. And I had to stand there and look cold and cruel while my wolf was howling and my heart was shattering and the only person I've ever loved was dying on the floor in front of me." His voice dropped to a ragged whisper. "I wanted to go to you. Every instinct screamed at me to hold you, comfort you, beg for your forgiveness. But my father was watching. His assassins were watching. And I knew that if I showed even a moment of weakness, he would give the order and your entire family would be dead before sunrise." Elena's legs gave out. She would have collapsed if Cale hadn't caught her, moving with that inhuman alpha speed to sweep her into his arms. He carried her to the chair by the fireplace and set her down gently, then knelt before her, his hands gripping hers. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "What I did is unforgivable. But I need you to know the truth. I need you to understand that every moment of the last 5 years, I have thought of you. Searched for you. Grieved for you. And when you walked into my chambers 3 weeks ago, when my wolf stirred for the first time since the rejection, his voice broke. I thought the moon goddess was giving me a second chance. I thought maybe, somehow, I could make things right." Elena pulled her hands away. She couldn't think with him touching her, couldn't sort through the maelstrom of emotions tearing her apart. "I need time," she whispered. "I know. I can't just." A howl split the night. Then another, and another, dozens of wolf voices rising in a chorus of warning and rage. Cale's head snapped toward the window, his eyes bleeding to gold. "Rogues," he snarled. "The perimeter has been breached." More howls. Screams. The clash of combat somewhere in the distance. Cale was on his feet instantly, striding toward the door with no trace of his fake disability. Stay here. Lock the door and don't open it for anyone but me. Cale. But he was already gone, shifting mid-stride into an enormous black wolf that disappeared down the corridor. Elena stood frozen, her mind still reeling from everything she'd learned. The attack, the revelations, the mate bond flooding back to life after 5 years of dormancy, it was too much. She couldn't process any of it. The door burst open. Marcus, Dominic's man, stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 rogues in hybrid form. His face was twisted in triumph. There you are, he said. Lord Dominic sends his regards. Elena backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The rogues advanced, their claws extended, their eyes empty of anything but hunger. Don't bother screaming, Marcus continued. The Alpha King is busy dealing with the distraction we arranged. By the time he realizes you're gone, you'll be miles away. Why? Elena demanded, stalling for time, looking for weapons, for escape routes, for anything. Dominic said he wanted me as an ally. Marcus laughed. You really believe that? Lord Dominic doesn't need your help to kill the king. He just needed bait. The word hit Elena like a physical blow. Bait. The Alpha King has been obsessed with finding his rejected mate for 5 years, Marcus explained, advancing slowly, savoring her fear. We knew that if we could just reunite you, he'd be distracted. Vulnerable. So we poisoned your brother to ensure you'd eventually come here. We leaked information about this job. We waited. And now, he smiled. Now we have everything we need to destroy him. The rogues lunged. Elena shifted without thinking, her wolf exploding from her body in a burst of moonlight-colored fur. She was smaller than her attackers, weaker, but she was also faster, and she was fighting for her life. Claws raked her side. Teeth snapped at her throat. She twisted, bit, clawed, fought with everything she had. But there were 3 of them, and she'd been suppressing her wolf for 5 years. Her body wasn't used to this form anymore, wasn't capable of the speed and strength she'd once possessed. A massive paw caught her across the face, sending her crashing into the wall. Enough, Marcus said calmly. Take her. Lord Dominic wants her alive, for now. The rogues advanced, and Elena knew she was out of options. Then a roar shook the building. Cale exploded through the window in a storm of shattered glass and black fur, his wolf form massive and terrible and magnificent. He hit the first rogue mid-leap, jaws closing around its throat with a sickening crunch. The second rogue wheeled to face him, and Cale tore it apart in 3 savage movements. Marcus turned to run. He didn't make it 2 steps before Cale's jaws closed around his leg. Wait! Marcus screamed. Wait, I have information. Lord Dominic's full plan, the assassins, the poison, everything. I'll tell you everything. Cale shifted back to human form, his hand wrapped around Marcus's throat, lifting the beta off the ground like he weighed nothing. Talk, Cale commanded. And Marcus, faced with the full fury of the Alpha King, did. Elena listened in growing horror as the scope of Dominic's plot became clear. The rogue attack wasn't just a distraction, it was the first wave. More attackers were coming, an army of rogues and traitors, timed to hit the estate at the same moment that Dominic's agents inside the house assassinated every guard loyal to Cale. And at the center of it all, Elena. The captured mate. The leverage that would force Cale to surrender or watch the woman he loved die slowly in front of him. Dominic never wanted me to spy for him, Elena said slowly, her human form restored, her body aching from the fight. He wanted me here so he could use me against you. Yes, Cale said grimly. My uncle has always been thorough. He turned to look at her, and despite everything, the blood on his skin, the violence in his eyes, the chaos erupting around them, his expression softened. I won't let him take you, he said quietly. I failed to protect you once. I won't fail again. Another howl split the air, closer this time, more urgent. The second wave was coming. And somewhere in the dark forest, Dominic was waiting with an army of rogues and a cure for Jamie's poison, the only leverage that still had power over her. Elena looked at Cale, at this man who had destroyed her and saved her and might destroy her all over again. "I still don't forgive you," she said. "I know. But right now, we have bigger problems." Cale's lips curved in something that was almost a smile. "Yes. We do." He offered her his hand. After a long moment, Elena took it. Chapter 4. The second wave hit like a hurricane. Rogues poured from the treeline. Dozens of them, their eyes gleaming yellow in the darkness, their bodies twisted into hybrid forms that were neither fully wolf nor fully human. They crashed against the estate's defenses with mindless ferocity, overwhelming the outer guards within minutes. Elena fought beside Cale in the chaos, her wolf form moving on instinct while her mind reeled from everything she'd learned. The mate bond pulsed between them like a living thing, flooding her with strength she'd forgotten she possessed. For one brief, brilliant moment, they moved as one, two halves of a whole, reunited after 5 years of separation. Then the net fell. It came from above, weighted with silver, slamming Elena to the ground before she could react. The metal burned everywhere it touched, searing through her fur and into her flesh. She screamed, a wolf's howl of agony, and shifted involuntarily back to human form, her body convulsing as the silver poisoned her blood. "Elena!" Cale's roar shook the night. She saw him will toward her, saw his massive black wolf tear through 3 rogues in as many seconds. But more were coming, flooding between them, forming a wall of teeth and claws and savage hunger. Hands grabbed her, human hands, rough and careless. Someone threw a hood over her head, plunging her into darkness. She felt herself being lifted, carried, the sounds of battle fading as her captors dragged her away from the estate. Away from Cale. The last thing she heard was his howl. A sound of such raw, devastating grief that it would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life. However long that turned out to be. Cale watched Elena disappear into the darkness, and something inside him shattered. For 2 years, he'd played the broken king. He'd sat in his wheelchair and let his enemies believe he was weak, let them scheme and plot and position themselves for his downfall. He'd been patient. Calculating. Strategic. No more. The wolf that erupted from him wasn't the controlled predator his guards knew, it was something older, darker, more primal. The beast that had been caged since his father's death, since the rejection, since the day he'd destroyed the only person who'd ever truly known him. That beast was done being caged. Cale hit the line of rogues at full speed, and they died. It wasn't combat. It was slaughter. He moved through them like a force of nature, his jaws crushing throats, his claws opening bellies, his massive body bowling over anything in his path. Blood painted the snow red. Screams filled the air, then stopped abruptly as their sources ceased to exist. His guards, the ones who'd spent 2 years pushing his wheelchair and helping him into bed and pretending not to notice when he occasionally slipped, stood frozen in shock. "Sir?" Captain Reyes's voice was strangled. "Your legs." Cale shifted back to human form, naked and covered in blood, his eyes still burning gold. "Get every able-bodied wolf in this estate armed and ready to move in 10 minutes. We're going after them." "But, your condition." "My condition was a lie." Cale's voice cracked like a whip. "I've been pretending to be crippled for 2 years to identify the traitors in my court. Now my uncle has taken my mate, and I am done pretending." The word hung in the air. Mate. Reyes's eyes widened. "The maid? She's everything." Cale grabbed a cloak from a fallen rogue and wrapped it around his shoulders. "And if she dies because I wasn't fast enough, I will burn this entire kingdom to the ground. Do you understand me, Captain?" Reyes snapped to attention. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Then move." They tracked the rogues for 3 hours, following a trail of scent and broken branches through the frozen forest. But Dominic had planned well. The trail split a dozen times, false paths leading in every direction, and by the time dawn painted the sky pink, they'd lost the true track completely. Cale stood in a snow-covered clearing, his chest heaving, his wolf howling in frustrated rage. "We'll find her," Reyes said quietly. "We have trackers, resources." "You don't understand." Cale's voice was barely human. "The bond. I can feel it now, fully awake for the first time in 5 years. She's in pain. She's terrified. And there's nothing I can do." He pressed a hand to his chest, where the mate bond pulsed like a second heartbeat. He'd severed it once, torn it out by the roots because his father had demanded it. He'd thought it was dead. It wasn't. It had been sleeping. And now it was awake and screaming Elena's name. "Your Majesty." One of the younger guards approached hesitantly. "We found something." He held out a scrap of fabric, part of Elena's dress, caught on a thorn bush. Wrapped inside it was a crumpled piece of paper. Cale snatched it, his hands trembling. The old silver mine, the note read in shaky handwriting. "North Road, 10 miles. He's waiting for you." "A trap," Reyes said grimly. "Obviously." Cale crushed the paper in his fist. "But it's also where she is. So it's where I'm going." "Sir, if we charge in without a plan." "Then find me a plan, Captain. You have 4 hours." Elena woke in darkness. Her head throbbed. Her wrists were bound with silver chains that burned constantly, keeping her wolf suppressed and her body weak. She was lying on cold stone, in what smelled like an underground chamber, damp earth and old metal and something else. Something chemical. Moonshade. She'd know that scent anywhere. "Ah, you're awake." Footsteps echoed in the darkness. A torch flared to life, illuminating Dominic's smiling face. "I apologize for the rough treatment," he said, settling into a chair that had been placed a safe distance from her chains. "My rogues can be enthusiastic. But your valuable cargo, Miss Sinclair. I gave strict orders that you weren't to be permanently damaged." Elena pushed herself upright, biting back a groan as her muscles screamed in protest. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. The throne." Dominic crossed his legs, perfectly at ease. "My brother stole it from me 30 years ago. His son has been squatting on it ever since. I've been patient, but patience has its limits." "So you're going to kill Cale? That's your grand plan? Kill him?" Dominic laughed. "Oh, no. Killing him would be far too simple. Too quick. After everything his family has taken from me, I want him to suffer first." He leaned forward, his eyes glittering in the torchlight. "Do you know what happens when a mate bond is severed, Miss Sinclair? The werewolf equivalent of a divorce?" Elena's stomach clenched. "I know exactly what happens. I survived it." "Yes, you did. Remarkable, really. Most Omegas don't survive severance from an alpha as powerful as Cale. But here's what you don't know." Dominic's smile widened. "A severed bond can be remade. It's painful, requiring a blood ritual and the willing participation of both parties. But it can be done. I'd never willingly. Willing participation can be encouraged. There are drugs, spells, methods of persuasion. The old magic doesn't particularly care whether the consent is genuine, only that the words are spoken." Dominic waved a hand dismissively. "But here's the truly interesting part. Once a bond is remade, it can be severed again. And the severance is even more devastating the second time." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. 3 severances, Dominic continued softly. That's what it takes to kill an alpha through the mate bond. The first weakens him. The second cripples him. The third, he drew a finger across his throat. The third stops his heart. You're insane. I'm practical. Kale is too powerful to kill in combat. Even my army of rogues couldn't guarantee victory against him in a fair fight. But the mate bond? That's his weakness. That's always been his weakness. Dominic rose from his chair and walked toward her slowly. Why do you think his father forced him to reject you in the first place? Because he knew. A mated alpha is a vulnerable alpha. And now I'm going to use that vulnerability to destroy him. Elena lunged against her chains, ignoring the silver's burn. He'll never let you remake the bond. He'll die before. He'll do anything to save you. Dominic's voice was certain. He's been searching for you for 5 years. He just revealed himself as fully functional rather than let you be taken. The man is pathetically, desperately in love with you, Miss Sinclair. And that love is going to be his death. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. I'll give you some time to consider your options. When Kale arrives, and he will arrive, you can either participate willingly in the blood ritual, or you can watch while my men torture your brother to death in front of you. He pulled the vial of golden liquid from his pocket and let the torchlight play across it. The cure exists. Help me destroy Kale, and Jamie lives. Refuse, and you can watch him die before I kill you too. The door slammed shut behind him. Elena slumped against the stone wall, her mind racing. The blood ritual. The 3 severances. She understood Dominic's plan now: remake the bond, sever it again, watch Kale suffer. Remake it, sever it, watch him weaken further. 3rd time, kill him without ever landing a blow. And she was the weapon. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes, it was impossible to tell in the darkness. Elena drifted in and out of consciousness, the silver chains sapping her strength, the moonshade in the air making her head swim. She thought about Kale, about his confession, about the tears on his face when he told her about his father's threats. He wept after you left. The voice came from somewhere nearby, weak, rasping, barely audible. Elena forced her eyes open. Another prisoner lay in the corner of the cell, a figure so still she'd assumed it was a corpse. But now she could see the slight rise and fall of his chest, could hear the labored wheeze of his breathing. Who's there? She whispered. The figure stirred. Coughed. In the dim light filtering under the door, Elena made out a man's face, scarred, weathered, one eye swollen shut. You're the Sinclair girl, he rasped. The one from the mating ceremony. Elena's heart clenched. How do you know who I am? Because I was there. Another cough, wet and terrible. 5 years ago. I was one of the wolves Kale's father hired to threaten your family. Elena went cold. We weren't supposed to actually hurt anyone, the man continued, his voice fading in and out. Just scare the boy. Make him think we'd do it if he didn't reject you. A bitter laugh that turned into more coughing. Old bastard paid us well. Enough to disappear, start over somewhere else. But some of us got greedy. Wanted more. And Dominic, he spat weakly. Dominic found us. Recruited us for his cause. Promised us power when he took the throne. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm dying. The man's good eye found hers, surprisingly clear despite his injuries. Dominic's men don't leave loose ends. I served my purpose, and now I'm being disposed of. He shifted, wincing. But before I go, I want someone to know the truth. About that night. About what really happened. Elena crawled closer, ignoring the chains burn. Tell me. The Alpha, Kale, he didn't want to do it. You have to understand that. We watched him pace for hours before the ceremony, arguing with his father, threatening to call the whole thing off. But the old king was implacable. He had assassins positioned with every member of your family. If Kale didn't sever the bond publicly, brutally, convincingly, the man shook his head. Everyone you loved would have died before sunrise. Elena felt tears streaming down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. He wept after you left, the man whispered. After the ceremony, after everyone had gone, he collapsed in the hallway outside the great hall and sobbed like a child. I've never seen an alpha weep like that. Never. His voice dropped even lower. And then he stood up, wiped his face, and started planning how to find you. How to protect you from a distance. How to make sure his father's threats could never touch you again. He searched for me. For 5 years. Every resource he had. But you were good at hiding, and his father kept interfering. The man's breathing was getting shallower. When the old king died, and he died hard, let me tell you, someone made sure of that. Cale doubled his efforts. Tripled them. I think it's the only thing that kept him going after the accident that put him in that wheelchair. Elena thought about Cale and his darkened chambers, maintaining a lie for 2 years, playing the broken king while his heart shattered over and over again. He never stopped loving you, the man breathed. Never. And Dominic's going to use that love to kill him. The man's eye fluttered closed. Hey. Elena rattled her chains, reaching toward him. Hey, stay with me. What's your name? How do I? But his chest had stopped moving. Elena sat in the darkness with a dead man and the weight of 5 years of misunderstanding crushing her chest. Cale hadn't betrayed her. He'd sacrificed himself for her. He'd torn out his own heart to protect her family, and she'd spent half a decade hating him for it. And now she was going to be used to murder him. No. No, she wouldn't let it happen. Elena looked down at her chains, at the silver burning her wrists, at the locked door that stood between her and freedom. She was weak, drugged, imprisoned. She had no allies, no resources, no way to fight. But she had the bond. It was awake now, fully alive for the first time in 5 years. She could feel Cale through it, his fear, his rage, his desperate determination as he searched for her. The connection was damaged, scarred by the original severance, but it was real. Maybe, just maybe, she could use it. Elena closed her eyes and reached for the bond. It was like trying to grasp smoke. The connection flickered and wavered, slipping through her mental fingers every time she thought she had it. The silver chains didn't help. They dulled her senses, weakened her wolf, made everything harder. But she kept trying. Hours passed. Days, maybe. She lost track. Dominic's men brought her water sometimes, stale bread that she forced herself to eat. The dead man's body was removed at some point, though she didn't remember when. Elena kept reaching. And finally, just as she was about to give up, she felt him. Cale. It wasn't words, exactly. More like emotions, images, sensations. She felt his exhaustion, his terror, his furious love. He was close, closer than she'd expected. His wolf was howling for her, and through the bond, she could hear the echo. She gathered every ounce of strength she had left and pushed a message through the connection. Don't come. He wants to remake the bond. 3 severances will kill you. Let me die instead. The response was immediate, overwhelming, almost painful in its intensity. No. Cale, listen to me. I am coming for you. Nothing will stop me. He'll use me as a weapon. Then I will find another way. But I am not leaving you to die. The connection flickered, fading as her strength gave out. Please, she sent desperately. I just found out the truth. I can't lose you again. I can't be the reason you die. Silence. For one terrible moment, she thought she'd lost him completely. Then, soft as a whisper. You won't be. I promise. The bond went quiet. Elena slumped against the wall, tears streaming down her face. He was coming. Despite her warning, despite the trap, despite everything, he was coming. The door burst open. Dominic stood in the entrance, his face twisted with rage. What did you do? Elena smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. I warned him. That's impossible. The silver should have, he stopped, his eyes narrowing. The bond. You reached him through the bond. Turns out 5 years of severance didn't kill it completely. Lucky me. Dominic crossed the cell in 3 strides and backhanded her across the face. Elena's head snapped to the side, her vision exploding with stars. It doesn't matter, he snarled. He's already on his way. My scout spotted him an hour ago, alone, in wolf form, running straight toward us like the lovesick fool he is. Dominic grabbed her chain and yanked her to her feet. He thinks he can save you. He thinks his strength will be enough. But by the time he reaches this mine, my rogues will have him surrounded, and you'll be ready to perform the blood ritual whether you like it or not. I'll die first. Maybe. Dominic's grip tightened. But your brother will die slower. He dragged her from the cell, up through winding tunnels, toward a chamber lit by torches and filled with rogues. An altar stood at its center, covered in symbols she didn't recognize. The blood ritual. Dominic threw her at the foot of the altar and turned to his men. The Alpha King is coming. Spread out and herd him toward this chamber. Don't engage directly, just keep him moving in the right direction. I want him exhausted and desperate by the time he reaches us. The rogues dispersed. Elena lay on the cold stone floor, her body screaming with pain, her mind racing for any option she'd missed. The message had been sent. Cale knew the trap, knew the danger. He was coming anyway. Because that's what mates did. They came for each other, even when it was hopeless. Even when it meant dying. Through the bond, she felt him getting closer. Felt his wolf's fury, his human mind's calculating determination. He wasn't running blindly into Dominic's trap, he was planning something. What are you doing? She sent. The response came like a caress, trust me. Then, from somewhere in the tunnels above, a howl split the darkness. Not the howl of a desperate, lovesick fool running to his death. The howl of an Alpha King going to war. Chapter 5. Elena had spent 5 years learning to survive. After the rejection, after the severance that had nearly killed her, she'd crawled out of the ashes of her old life and built something new. She'd worked jobs that paid under the table, moved through territories where no one asked questions, and learned skills that a proper alpha's mate would never need to know. How to pick locks with a hairpin. How to move silently through hostile territory. How to turn anything. A broken chain, a sharp stone, a moment of distraction, into a weapon. Dominic had made a mistake leaving her alone in that ritual chamber. The silver chains were the biggest obstacle. They burned constantly, sapping her strength, keeping her wolf suppressed. But silver had weaknesses too. It was soft, malleable. And the manacles around her wrists, while painful, weren't perfectly fitted. Elena had small hands. She'd dislocated her thumb twice before. Once escaping a bar fight in the Northern Territories, once fleeing a landlord who'd wanted more than rent. She knew how to do it quickly, how to bite back the scream, how to pop the joint back in before the swelling made it impossible. She did it now. The pain was blinding. Her vision went white, and she tasted blood where she'd bitten through her lip. But her left hand slipped free of its manacle, and suddenly the silver was only burning one wrist instead of 2. She used her free hand to work on the other chain. The lock was crude, Dominic hadn't expected her to escape, hadn't thought the broken omega worth proper restraints. Within minutes, both hands were free. Elena crouched in the shadows of the ritual chamber, assessing her surroundings. The altar dominated the center of the room, covered in symbols drawn in something that smelled like old blood. Candles ringed the space, their flames casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. And on a small table near the altar sat the implements for the blood ritual, a silver knife, 2 chalices, a vial of dark liquid that made her wolf snarl in recognition. Moonshade. The ritual required blood from both parties, freely given. But Dominic had mentioned drugs, spells, methods of coercion. The moonshade was probably part of that, a way to make her compliant, to force the willing participation the old magic demanded. Elena smiled grimly. Dominic wanted a ritual? She'd give him one. Working quickly, she moved through the chamber, sabotaging everything she could without making it obvious. She replaced the moonshade with water from a bucket in the corner. She scored the silver knife's blade against stone until it was too dull to cut cleanly. She smeared the blood-drawn symbols, breaking the patterns in ways that looked accidental. Then she hid. Cale hit the mine like a thunderbolt. He'd studied the terrain during his approach, identified guard positions, mapped escape routes. Dominic expected him to come charging in blindly, desperate and reckless. Cale intended to be neither. The first rogue died before it even knew he was there, a shadow detaching from darkness, jaws closing, silence. The second managed half a howl before Cale tore out its throat. By the time he reached the mine's entrance, he'd eliminated 6 sentries and no alarm had been raised. Inside, the tunnels branched in a dozen directions. Cale closed his eyes and reached for the bond. Elena. Where are you? The response came immediately, stronger now that he was close. Main chamber. Down the central tunnel, 3rd branch on the left. Dominic has maybe 20 rogues left, and he's getting impatient. Are you hurt? A pause. Nothing permanent. I freed myself from the chains. Despite everything, Cale felt his lips curl in something like a smile. Of course you did. Just get here. And Cale, her mental voice softened. Be careful. Please. I make no promises. He moved through the tunnels like a ghost, following the bond's pull. Rogues crossed his path occasionally, none of them survived the encounter. By the time he reached the main chamber's entrance, his black fur was matted with blood and his wolf was singing with savage joy. He paused at the threshold, assessing the scene. Dominic stood before the altar, his back to the entrance, berating a cluster of rogues for their incompetence. He's one wolf. One. How has he gotten this far? He's not an ordinary wolf, my lord. One of the rogues, braver or stupider than the others, spoke up. The stories about him being crippled were lies. I know what he is. Dominic spun, his face contorted with rage. I've known for months. Why do you think I set this trap? The blood ritual is the only way to. He stopped. His eyes locked on the entrance. On Cale. Nephew. Dominic's voice shifted, smoothing into false warmth. How good of you to join us. I was worried you'd gotten lost. Cale shifted to human form, rising to his full height. Naked, blood-streaked, his eyes still burning gold, he looked like a nightmare given flesh. Where is she? Safe. For now. Dominic gestured, and 2 rogues emerged from the shadows, dragging Elena between them. Except. Cale's eyes narrowed. Elena wasn't struggling. Wasn't crying. She was hanging limply in the rogue's grip, but her eyes were sharp, alert, and fixed on his with an intensity that made his wolf surge forward. She was playing possum. And she wanted him to know it. Here's how this is going to work, Dominic continued, unaware of the silent communication passing between them. You're going to participate in the blood ritual willingly. The bond will be remade between you and your precious mate. And then you'll sever it again, Cale finished. 3 times total. Each severance weakens me further. The 3rd one kills me. He cocked his head. Did you really think I didn't know about the ritual's darker applications, Uncle? I've had access to the royal archives my entire life. Dominic's smile faltered. Then you know you have no choice. Refuse, and I'll kill her slowly in front of you. Her brother too. Actually, Elena said, her voice cutting through the chamber, I have a counteroffer. She moved. The rogues holding her weren't prepared for the omega they dismissed as broken to suddenly become a whirlwind of violence. Elena jabbed her thumb into one's eye, dropping him screaming, then used his falling body as leverage to kick the second in the throat. By the time Dominic registered what was happening, she was free and sprinting toward Cale. Now would be good, she called over her shoulder. Cale smiled, a real smile, fierce and proud, and shifted. The chamber exploded into chaos. They fought together. Elena had never experienced anything like it. Despite 5 years of separation, despite the severance and the hatred and the lies between them, their movements synced perfectly. When Cale lunged left, she went right. When he drew rogues toward him, she flanked them from behind. Their wolves recognized each other, called to each other, moved as one creature in 2 bodies. Behind you, Cale sent through the bond. Elena ducked without looking, felt claws whistle through the space where her head had been, and drove her stolen knife into the attacker's gut. 3 more coming from the tunnel. I see them. Cale intercepted 2, Elena took the 3rd, using the environment to her advantage. She was smaller, weaker than any of them, but she was faster, smarter, and 5 years of hard living had stripped away everything that wasn't essential. She fought dirty because dirty was what kept you alive. Within minutes, the rogues were dead or dying. Only Dominic remained, backed against the altar, a silver blade clutched in his trembling hand. Stay back, he snarled. I have reinforcements coming. The Noble Council. The Noble Council has been informed of your treachery. Cale stalked forward, his wolf form hulking and terrible. Captain Reyes delivered the evidence an hour ago. The council voted to strip you of your lands and title before I even entered this mine. Dominic's face went white. You're lying. I'm many things, uncle. A liar isn't one of them. Cale shifted to human form, standing naked and unbowed before his enemy. Did you really think I spent 2 years playing the cripple without gathering evidence? Every letter you sent. Every payment you made. Every traitor you bought. I documented all of it. Then why? Dominic's voice cracked. Why let it go this far? Why let yourself be attacked, your mate taken? Because I needed to be sure. Cale's voice was ice. Because as long as you thought you were winning, you kept revealing more of your network. And because, he glanced at Elena, something soft entering his expression. Because some things are worth risking everything for. Elena moved to stand beside him, her body battered but her spine straight. It's over, Dominic. Give us the cure for my brother's poison, and maybe, we'll let you live. Dominic stared at them. The Alpha King and his rejected mate, standing united against him after everything he'd done to destroy them. His face twisted through a dozen emotions before settling on something ugly. Desperate. If I can't have the throne, he hissed, neither can you. He lunged for the altar, grabbing the ritual implements, slashing his own palm with the dulled blade. Blood spattered across the symbols Elena had smeared, and Dominic began chanting in the old language, forcing power into a ritual that wasn't properly prepared. The air crackled. The candles flared. Something dark and wrong began gathering in the center of the chamber. He's trying to corrupt the bond magic, Cale said, his voice tight. If he completes the chant, it'll. I know what it'll do. Elena grabbed his hand, her fingers interlacing with his. Which is why we're going to beat him to it. Elena. Listen to me. She turned to face him fully, her green eyes blazing. The blood ritual requires willing participation from both parties. But it doesn't specify what kind of bond gets made. Dominic wanted to remake our old bond, the one-sided claim where you held all the power and I was just your possession. But that's not the only option. Understanding dawned in Cale's face. A true mate bond. Accepted on both sides. As equals. Elena's voice was steady despite the chaos building around them. I spent 5 years hating you for something you didn't choose. You spent 5 years searching for me, trying to protect me from a distance. We've both been broken by what happened. But we don't have to stay broken. Dominic's chanting grew louder, more desperate. The darkness in the chamber's center was taking shape, something monstrous and hungry. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Cale said. What I did, what you suffered. I know why you did it now. Elena squeezed his hand. And I know what it cost you. That's not forgiveness, not yet. That takes time. But it's a start. She pulled the dulled ritual knife from her belt. She'd grabbed it during the fight, and offered it to him. Will you accept me as your equal? Your true mate? Not because of some destiny or political arrangement, but because you choose it? Cale took the knife. His hand was trembling, but his voice was clear. I have chosen you since the moment I met you. I have never stopped choosing you. And I will spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of that choice. They cut their palms in unison, his left, her right, and pressed their wounds together. The darkness Dominic had been building shattered like glass. Light exploded through the chamber, warm, golden, overwhelming. Elena felt the bond remake itself, but it was nothing like the original claim. That had been a chain, a leash, a mark of ownership. This was a bridge. A doorway. A joining of equals who chose each other freely. She felt Cale's emotions flood through her, his love, his grief, his desperate hope. And she let him feel hers in return, the anger that was finally fading, the trust that was slowly building, the fire that had never quite died. I see you, she sent through the bond. All of you. The good and the bad. The king and the man. And I see you, he replied. My mate. My equal. My heart. The power surge hit them simultaneously. Elena had heard stories about true mate bonds, how they amplified both wolves, made them stronger than the sum of their parts. She'd always assumed it was exaggeration. It wasn't. She felt her wolf rise up, fully unleashed for the first time in 5 years, blazing with borrowed alpha strength. Cale's power wrapped around her like armor, and she knew without asking that her power was doing the same for him. They turned to face Dominic together. He was on his knees, the corrupted ritual magic having backlashed when their bond formed. His face was gray, his body shaking. The darkness he'd tried to summon was gone, consumed by the light of their union. Impossible, he whispered. The bond was severed. It should have been, you can't just. We can. Cale's voice resonated with power. We did. And now, Elena added, you're going to tell us where you kept the moonshade antidote. Or we're going to find out exactly how much damage a true mate bond can do. Dominic talked. He talked about the antidote, hidden in his quarters at the estate. He talked about his network of traitors, confirming and expanding on the evidence Cale had already gathered. He talked about the original conspiracy with Cale's father, about the assassins who'd threatened Elena's family, about everything he'd done in his 3 decades of scheming for the throne. When he was finished, Cale had him bound and guarded by the few estate wolves who'd followed their king into the mine. What happens to him? Elena asked as they emerged into the dawn light, the eastern sky painted pink and gold. Trial before the noble council. Then execution, most likely. Cale glanced at her. Unless you'd prefer something more personal. Elena considered it. This man had poisoned her brother, manipulated her into returning, tried to use her as a weapon against the person she loved. She had every right to demand his blood. But she was tired of blood. Tired of revenge. Tired of letting the past dictate her future. Let the council handle it, she said. I'm done with him. Cale nodded, something like pride warming his expression. Then he turned to Captain Reyes, who was waiting at the tree line with a contingent of guards. Get word to the healers. We need them ready to administer the antidote the moment we retrieve it. And Captain, Cale's voice softened. Thank you. For believing in me, even when I couldn't tell you the truth. Reyes bowed. Always, Your Majesty. They found the antidote exactly where Dominic had said, a golden vial hidden in a secret compartment of his desk. Elena held it in trembling hands, hardly daring to believe that after 5 years, Jamie might finally be saved. We should go, Kale said gently. The sooner we reach him. I know. Elena tucked the vial carefully into her pocket. But first, there's something I need to do. She walked through the estate's grand hallways, past the servants who stared and whispered, past the noble guests who'd been awakened by the night's chaos. Kale followed without asking where she was going. She stopped in the great hall. The same hall where, 5 years ago, she'd collapsed on the cold stone floor while 300 wolves watched. The same hall where Kale had called her worthless, unworthy, too weak to stand beside him. The same hall where her old life had ended in pain and humiliation. Elena? Kale's voice was uncertain. What are you? I need to see it. She walked to the center of the room, to the exact spot where she'd fallen. I need to remember what happened here. And then I need to let it go. The room was empty except for the two of them, the early morning light streaming through high windows. Elena stood in that spot and let herself feel everything, the memories, the pain, the grief she'd carried for 5 years. Then she let it go. It wasn't easy. It wasn't instant. But she felt the weight lifting, felt the chains she'd wrapped around her own heart beginning to loosen. I spent 5 years being the woman Cale Blackwood destroyed, she said quietly. I let that define me. Let it drive every choice I made. But I don't want to be that woman anymore. Cale moved to stand before her, his expression raw with emotion. Who do you want to be? Someone new. Someone stronger. Elena met his eyes. Someone who writes her own story instead of letting others write it for her. Cale sank to his knees. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in 3 generations, the man who'd pretended to be broken for 2 years to protect his kingdom, knelt before her on the same floor where he'd once shattered her world. I owe you more than I can ever repay, he said. I owe you 5 years of suffering. 5 years of loneliness. 5 years of believing you were worthless when you were always the most precious thing in my life. Cale. Let me finish. His voice was thick. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve a second chance. But I'm asking for one anyway, not because I've earned it, but because I will spend every day of the rest of my life trying to. Elena looked down at him. This proud, powerful man, on his knees before her, offering her everything he had. Get up, she said. He flinched. Get up, she repeated, softer now, because I'm not going to have my mate groveling on the floor. She offered him her hand. We're equals now, remember? That means you don't kneel to me. We stand together. Cale took her hand and rose. Together, he echoed. The noble council convened 3 days later. The hall was packed. Every major family represented, every political power in the kingdom present. They'd come expecting to assess the crippled king's fitness to rule. They got something very different. Cale stood before them, whole and strong, and told them everything. The fake paralysis. The conspiracy with his father. The reason for Elena's rejection. Dominic's treachery and attempted coup. He held nothing back, laid every lie and every truth before them and let them judge. Then he called Elena forward. She walked through the crowd with her head high, wearing clothes borrowed from the estate stores, not fine enough for a queen, but cleaner than anything she'd owned in 5 years. The nobles whispered as she passed, and she let them. 5 years ago, Cale announced, his voice carrying through the hall, I publicly rejected this woman. I called her worthless. Unworthy. I severed our mate bond in front of this very council and left her broken on this very floor. The whispers intensified. I was lying. Cale's voice cracked, and he didn't try to hide it. I said those things because my father threatened to kill her entire family if I didn't. I was trying to protect her. Instead, I destroyed her, and nearly destroyed myself in the process. He turned to Elena, taking her hands in front of the entire assembly. Elena Sinclair is not my rejected mate. She is my true mate, my Luna, my queen, my equal in all things. The bond between us has been remade, freely chosen by both of us, stronger than anything we had before. He raised their joined hands. I am asking this council to recognize her as my rightful queen. And I am asking her, in front of everyone who witnessed her humiliation, if she will accept the title. The hall was silent. Elena looked at Cale, at this man who had hurt her so badly and loved her so deeply. She thought about the 5 years she'd spent running, hiding, surviving. She thought about Jamie, recovering in the hospital wing with the antidote finally working its way through his blood. She thought about the future, uncertain, terrifying, but for the first time in years, full of possibility. Yes, she said. The council erupted. That night, after the formal ceremonies and the political maneuvering and the endless stream of nobles offering congratulations they may or may not have meant, Cale and Elena finally found themselves alone. They stood on the balcony of the king's chambers, looking out over the forest where they'd nearly lost each other. The moon was full, painting everything in silver light. It won't be easy, Elena said quietly. The council, the nobles, half of them still think I'm not good enough to be queen. They'll learn. Cale's arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. You survived a bond severance. You survived 5 years alone. You escaped from my uncle's prison and helped defeat him using nothing but your wits. If anyone questions your worth, I'll invite them to try surviving what you did. Elena laughed, a real laugh, the first one in longer than she could remember. That might not be the most diplomatic approach. Probably not. He turned her to face him, his silver eyes soft in the moonlight. But diplomacy was never my strength. I'm better at the direct approach. Is that what this is? Direct? Very direct. He cupped her face in his hands. I love you, Elena. I have loved you since I was 18 years old and I saw you across a crowded ballroom and my wolf said mine. I loved you when I rejected you. I loved you when I thought you were dead. I loved you when you walked back into my life pretending to be a maid and smelling like herbs and secrets. Cale. I spent 5 years pretending to be broken, he murmured against her lips. Turns out, I was, until you came back. He kissed her. It was nothing like the formal, proper kiss they'd shared at their aborted mating ceremony 5 years ago. It was fire and hunger and 5 years of longing finally finding its outlet. Elena melted into it, letting herself feel everything she'd been denying, the love, the desire, the bond between them singing with joy. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena rested her forehead against his. For the record, she whispered, I love you too. I tried not to. I tried so hard. But apparently, mate bonds are stubborn. Cale laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. The stubbornest. We have a lot to figure out. The kingdom, the council, my brother's recovery. Tomorrow. He swept her into his arms, carrying her back into the chamber. Tonight is ours. Elena let herself be carried, let herself trust, let herself believe that after everything, they might actually get their happy ending. Outside, the wolves of the Blackwood pack lifted their voices in celebration, howling their joy to the moon. Their king was healed. Their queen had come home. And the bond that had almost destroyed them both had finally made them whole. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily and also, to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.